Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. And, well, I don't know if I should be happy or unhappy there is such a huge crowd. And I'm referring to the topic because it's not a very happy topic for Saturday morning, but I'm so happy that you're here. The topic for this morning is how should Europe's mainstream media cover far-right political parties and policies? Should they denounce, ignore, contextualize, include on mainstream the far-right rhetoric and politics? My name is Mirjana Tomic. I am a former journalist and I live in Vienna. I'm not Austrian, I'm from Belgrade, and I host and moderate seminars on politics and media in Europe for journalists and researchers for two media organizations in Vienna, Forum Journalismus and Medien, founded by the city of Vienna to promote quality journalism, and Presseklub Concordia, founded in 1859 to fight for press freedom, and it still fights for press freedom. Today, I would really like to understand what can be done, what was done wrong, and to what extent we have, until certain point, the mainstream media, quality media, avoided the topics that are of interest for the far right. I have chosen three countries: Finland, France, and Germany, and I will say immediately why, and why I have excluded Eastern Europe. When one thinks of Hungary or Poland, one thinks immediately of the far right. But at the same time, in Eastern European countries, certain far right ideas are not only of the far right, they are also of countries that could call themselves social democratic, etc. So I think it is important to understand the far right in countries with a long democratic tradition, on the one hand, and on the other hand, that will contribute with a lot of MPs to the European Parliament. France and Germany together have over 23% of the MPs for the European Parliament. So I think it is quite important who they will vote. I shall now introduce my speakers. That is Laura Sarikowski. She's until very recently, editor-in-chief of premium content of Helsingin Sanomat. This is the paper that, since you come from different countries, that enjoys 80% of people trust the news that this paper publishes. It's not very common. Then the second speaker is Gilles Paris, who joined Le Monde in '89. He has worked in different sections. Both Laura and Gilles were correspondents in the US. And now Gilles is part of the editorial board, and he also writes comments. Last but not least, just extremely important, is Ann-Katrin, who is on the screen. She unfortunately could not make it to Perugia. She is political editor for the German weekly Der Spiegel. Her main topics are the far-right party Alternative für Deutschland and disinformation. Before I ask Laura, who will start the first question, I would like to stress that the far-right parties in Europe, without entering now, it's a very short session, the definition, are very different. So we cannot say that they all share the same values. For example, in northern countries, they're not misogynist because women's rights are used as a tool against Islam. In certain countries, they are misogynist, and I understand that in Italy, Giorgia Meloni is starting to promote certain policies that are not exactly in favor in Europe. But there are some topics that go across the board, and that is identity, that is migration. For some countries, it is Russia, it is welfare state and social benefits, just to mention a few. And between these three countries that I have chosen, I will start why I chose Finland, because it contributes with only 15 MPs to the European Parliament. The reason I chose Finland is because, according to international classifications, they're #1 in the quality of education, in the trust of media, which is about 69% trust in news, because recently Finns were declared the happiest people in the world. because Finns are even ready to pay for media. According to a Reuters report, more than 20%, unlike France or Germany when it's only 11% who would want to pay for media. So why in happy Finland the far right is in the government? And how did we get there? And why, considering that Finland does not have many migrants, and considering that most Finnish newspapers are quality newspapers? So how did the far right spread their ideas, and how did they come to government? So the first set of questions will be basically setting the context, because every country is a different context. Laura, set please the Finnish context for us.
I'm always happy to represent the almost nearly perfect people here. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. I have to say that even though Finland does very well in the stats and was actually recently declared the happiest country in the world for 7th year in a row, we don't escape the same problems everywhere in Europe. For example, the problems of globalization affecting especially the least populated areas in north and eastern Finland. That comes with the decline of economy, and then, of course, the effects of migration. The support for our True Finns Party, that is nowadays called the Finns Party, is not new. It started already with a massive victory in 2011 elections. Since last summer, the Finns Party has been part of the coalition government and is now the second largest party in the government, and they have enacted some sort of a quite tough anti-immigration measures. What changed this picture, however, last December was the fact that Russia started to use immigration and migrants as a weapon against Finland. So Russian officials started to transport refugees from St. Petersburg and from elsewhere in Russia to the Finnish border in order to pressure Finland for political reasons, since Finland had joined NATO recently. And that turned the public opinion in Finland in favor of sort of closing the borders, even though that is in conflict with the international law. So I would say that the issue of Russia is very specific for Finland, because I understand in many of the European countries the populist movement and the populist parties are actually quite pro-Russia. In Finland, you cannot be an elected politician at the moment and be pro-Putin or pro-Russia. So that issue sort of unites all the...
racism in Finland.
Sorry, what's that?
Racism in Finland. Racist, yeah, if you can focus on that.
Racism?
Yeah.
Well, last summer, when the new government was formed, 3 of the ministers of the True Finns Party, or their old racist writings and opinions were publicized, and that, of course, caused a quite big uproar in Finland. But you have to understand that even though the media was criticized a lot about not writing enough of the racism before, it's actually not true. There's been a lot of coverage on that, even since the early 2000s. I do personally believe that you have to understand that for some people, racism, they vote for the populists because of their racist opinions and not despite of it. So even if the media would uncover racist writings, it's not going to do away with the racism.
Thank you very much. Now we come to France, a country that has a rather longer history of the far right, and there are more and more far right parties, so it's not only one. The trust in media in France is 30%. The trust in Le Monde is 52%, so half of the readers trust what they read. I'm quoting the Reuters review. And the far-right party in France, the Front National, was founded in, I think, 72. But for what I understand is that for a very long time, the media never took really seriously the concerns of the far right until it became more or less mainstreamed. And then we have further to the right, Reconquête. As I was preparing for this, I told Gilles, I'm old enough to remember 20 years ago how Jean-Marie Le Pen was basically kicked out of the studios of the main French media. And now the president of the party, Jordan Bardella, he's totally mainstreamed. He appears in, he's a respectable politician. And at the same time, there seems to me now that the topics that were off the news headlines are now at the core of discussion, and that is the French identity and how much each one of the parties loves France. So could you please give us the French context and how did it evolve?
Yes. Thank you very much for all of you coming on a cold Saturday morning. So I represent the grumpy people. The history of the far right is very long, you're right. And now we have two main far right parties, but the main one, the number one, is the one of Marine Le Pen. And what was very interesting is that for years, for decades, the far right party was identified with controversies, with something who was not in the middle of the consensus in the society. And that's why probably the media were not ready to pay attention to the issue they were putting forward. And then...
Can you tell us which issues those were?
The issues were, from the very beginning, immigration. But it was also blended with the dark side of French history, the relation with the German occupation, and also the decolonization, which happened especially in Algeria. So the far right was cultivating nostalgia of the past, and that was a reason for what mainstream media were not very interested in what they were saying. It changed when Marine Le Pen decided to de-demonize her party. She fired her father, from whom she had inherited her party, and she put aside the issue like anti-Semitism and the old issue of the first Front National. And she was able to triangulate in touching issue which were usually put forward by the left. The social services who are declining in France, and this kind of things, purchase power. So it led to a new image of the party, and it's the reason for why they could have 30% of the vote in the coming European election.
Would you say that the French far right is democratic?
As a party, no. It's more a movement built around charismatic leaders than a democratic organization with internal election and with internal debate.
But
so
they do respect the institutions?
Up to now, they said they will respect it. But if you take Hungary as exhibit one for the relation between far-right parties and freedom of expression and freedom of the press, one can be a little bit worried, because if you remember what Orban did when they created this Central European News and Press Foundation in 2018, I guess, they are restricting pluralism in the media. So we have that in mind, especially because when you look at the votes of the French far right at the European Parliament, they never vote against what it's reproached to Hungary. They are always in favor of what they are doing, and they consider that non-interference should be the rule number one.
Thank you very much. Now, Ann-Katrin. Ann-Katrin has been covering for the past 5 years Alternative für Deutschland, a party that began its rise in Eastern Germany, and now it is in West Germany as well. And it was created in, it was founded in 2013. And in Vienna 10 years ago, I recall an event where we were having coffee between sessions that a young woman from Eastern Germany said, the far right is coming, and no one really believed her. It was like, oh, come on, she is exaggerating. And here we are, 10 years later, or 11 years later, and Ann-Katrin can tell you how the movement has evolved, what she has seen, and how it has been mainstreamed. I would also like you, Ann-Katrin, to mention to what extent the mainstream German media have really addressed the issues that people care about. So the issues that are now addressed by AfD and by everybody else. Please, go ahead, Ann-Katrin.
Yes, so first of all, thanks for having me digitally. I'm sorry to could not have attended in person. And then I think in Germany we were quite lucky for a long time to not have a party like this being doing well in polls and elections. And I think what's happened is, of course, even in Germany, especially with that history, it was always like a thing that media would look at, you know, what is the far right doing? And we had, like in the 90s, we had the NPD, which was doing quite well, but not as well as the AfD nowadays. So what happened in between? I think the smart move of the AfD was to start with like professors at the front, like rather old men who weren't even doing like really agitating speeches or anything, just very long talks they did, and they talked about the euro mainly. And in Germany, everybody was very proud of its economy and of its Deutsche Mark. So when they were like, oh, we don't like the euro, I think the people, but also the media, was very interested in this like tiny party at the beginning, and they gave them a lot of room. And then it kind of it didn't get into the Bundestag at the first try, but the second one it did in 2017. And in between, we had a huge debate about migration, right? And that also helped. About your second question, I don't think there's issues that the media wasn't doing at all. I think they were doing it in a different rhetoric. So before the AfD was bigger, we kind of tried to address problems, but find like a, you know, constructive language more like, but with these kind of debates and the AfD pushing also the Conservative Party to be more critical about migration in their rhetoric. I mean, they were always critical about it and always cautious, but they didn't use this kind of populist speech and language. So that is what changed. And because the Conservatives didn't hold like the cordon sanitaire in every way, that really helped the AfD to get normalized.
Thank you very much. Two questions for you, Ann-Katrin. One, is AfD democratic? Do you think they would respect the institutions if they come to power, or the number of MPs increases? That is one question. And I know you have witnessed the change, you know, how the rhetoric of the far right has been mainstreamed in Germany. Could you please comment on that?
So to the first questions, no. I mean, it's a democratic party in the sense that we vote for it democratically in this country and that they work alongside the rules, basically. But it's not a party that likes democracy in the way it is right now and that will start to abolish it. They have lots of policies that can already show this, and lots of sayings of their party people at the front, where you can see that they would go against the public broadcasting media and all kinds of institutions, also the Office for the Protection of the Constitution that we have in Germany. So no would be the first answer. And the second is, I think what they managed to establish in the beginning right away was that they installed some kind of distrust into media, like in any other country. So the narrative of the lying press, as they call it in Germany, the Lügenpresse, was very successful, because now lots of media have this feeling that, you know, we're too left-wing or too woke or whatever. And so they kind of go against that feeling instead of just looking at the information and discussing whether subject should be brought bigger or not. And I think the kind of subjects that they also put forward was, besides migration, obviously identity, which has kind of gone into the mainstream, that we talk a lot about gender sensible language and all kinds of subjects like that. Although in general, it's not an issue that changes people's daily lives while prices are rising or inflation is hitting or whatever.
Thank you. Laura, how should mainstream media cover? Yesterday, Masha Gessen at one of the sessions said, she anticipating a possible victory of Donald Trump, that covering certain way means normalizing. But then if you do not cover, then you have sort of two parallel worlds. How do you think should media cover? Should they quote every outrageous comment? Should they silence? What should be silenced? What should be said? To what extent can mainstream media really reach people who are, let's say, on the other side? What do you think would be the way to do it?
Well, in Finland, we have a good situation that the mainstream media still has a very large audience. And based on my experiences covering Trump in the US, I've dotted a list of certain rules that could be applied in covering mainstream, or covering far right, or all the politics in Europe and in the US. I'm not going to go through all the lists, but I'll make a couple of points. First of all, you have to be even more specific and correct in reporting than normally, because undemocratic forces will use every tiny mistake to undermine all reporters and all media. Secondly, you have to reconsider newsworthiness, especially in the digital age. It's very lazy journalism to report on what unbelievable somebody has said on X this time, because maximizing the clicks by giving publicity to every outrageous opinion only increases polarization in the society. So you have to look at the deeds, not the words. Often politicians say one thing and they do actually something else. You have to follow the deeds. Then, and this is very important, you have to go to the roots of the support. You have to try to understand why there is so much support for opinions that didn't used to be considered politically correct. People are not stupid. They have reasons for voting the way they do. And at the same time, understanding is not acceptance. It means that you have to explain, you have to understand why people vote the way they do, but you don't have to, of course, accept racist opinions. So pursue truth with no agenda and let the audience make up their own minds. And then once you get targeted, which obviously almost every journalist covering the far right will do at some point, limit your own social media use under attack. You are not obliged to take all the shit all the time. And what has personally worked very well for me, if I've been under a sort of a social media attack, I've told everybody online, I'm not going to be here on X 24/7. If you have some relevant information or criticism, please email me. And that has helped quite a bit in sort of a funneling the criticism.
Thank you so much. Gilles, I would like to ask you two questions. One is the role of social media and the far right, and the second, do you think that Le Monde has been able to go to the roots of and understand the support of the voters of the far right, on far right, because we have Le Pen, we have also Zemmour.
Of course, the second one is the easiest. It's important to mention the dominance of the far right on the social networks, because the National Front turned Rassemblement National was the first party in France to have his website, and the first one to have also community managers. And they have a lot of influencers on the network. And those influencers are hunting in packs. And when they decide to use, especially miscellaneous news, a crime or a robbery somewhere, they will push it forward relentless. And they will at the end, they will impose it on the agenda because, as you know, unfortunately, because it's for better or worse, but mainly for worse, Twitter remains a kind of editor-in-chief in France. And there is some laziness in the newsrooms. So when those influencers are succeeding in pushing forward an issue, you will find this issue in the front page of the magazines who are considered as neutral or who are helping in a way the far-right ideas. So facing this dominance on social network, I would use a far-right slogan: take back control. Take back control of the narrative. Take back control of the priority. You're not supposed to be imposed a political agenda. You can also go deeper and check if what they are putting forward is accurate and represents the reality or not. When it comes to Le Monde, I would say that we were, in a way, we were very lecturing at the beginning, and it's probably correct to say that we were looking down on some issues. That was at the beginning. It's not the case anymore because the threat is here. The point is that Le Monde readers are not far-right voters. So we are talking to people who are already convinced that the far-right agenda is probably not the perfect agenda for a country.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious, you know, Le Monde is not exactly the paper that you read very easily. It's a very elaborate language. Yesterday, I learned that in some countries that they're using artificial intelligence to simplify the language in order to reach more audience. What do you think of that?
Oh, I'm shocked. and I totally disagree with what you are saying with Le Monde. I'm writing in Le Monde, so I can tell you that it's not that complicated. We have the newspaper and we have the website, and you've got different level of article. You've got short stories, you've got long stories, so everyone can pick what you want. No, it's easy to read Le Monde. And we have Le Monde in English now, so please do.
Thank you very much. Ann-Katrin, when it comes to the topics that are covered by Spiegel and other mainstream German media, and do you have the feeling that AfD sets the topics that then other media take up upon?
I think there has been some different stages on the AfD coverage. So in the beginning, I think they got very much room, and sometimes media kind of fell for what they were kind of handing you to publish. And then there was a long while, I'd say, the media was doing pretty well, just covering what was really important about the party, not being pushed by their agenda. And now when the polls rose during the last year, basically, I think lots of these things that we had learned as media have kind of gone away again, or journalists were not sure whether those were the right strategies, although I would say they were, in the sense that they were like, but if people still want to vote for them, although we do, you know, this kind of objective coverage, mostly on what's going wrong in the party and some programmatic issues, then we have to talk to them more. I would disagree in the sense, I would always say, yes, we need to report on them, and we need, as journalists, to talk to them to find out what they want to do and how they want to change this country, and what kind of ideas they have and why people would vote for them. But also, I would say, think about, as a journalist, their strategy. Be aware of why they're pushing certain subjects, why they are, why they have certain people in the party that it will always do like a thing that gets like the next scandal, because what they want to do is move the whole discourse to the right. Because if that works, which is what's happening right now in Germany, then they will win, not next year, but maybe in 5 years. So what they try to do is, there's a theory behind it, sociology, it's called Overton window. And by, having someone like Björn Höcke or Mr. Tilschneider or other people of the AfD have say something that is like wildly being criticized, even by their own party, then if they do it, then they say, oh, I didn't mean it like that. And then they do it again. And so suddenly you get tired of it. You're like, oh, I've heard that before, and suddenly it's being normalized in the sense that nobody's like, oh, that's crazy. Oh, really? So the second and the third and the fourth time they say it, you're like, oh, yeah, we know this of them. And suddenly, the whole discourse moves. So that is
Can you give some concrete examples of the ideas they're pushing and, let's say, the outrages? I think you yourself also wrote that some members of AfD have direct contact with neo-Nazis. So we are speaking really far right. And could you comment about these ideas that they are pushing that may scare certain people? That's one thing. And what do you think is the base of their support? I understand initially in East Germany, it had to do with the fact that people felt second-rate citizens, second-class citizens, and then no one really listened to them, especially not the media from Hamburg or Berlin. But now the ideas are spreading to West Germany. So what do you think is the cause of where does the success story lie?
So first of all, the subject. So for example, in 2018, there was like a big demonstration from neo-Nazis. It was called the Tower March. And then AfD politicians went there and went basically into the first row. And it was a huge scandal, them, walking together with these kind of neo-Nazis on the street, showing like their power by being there very presently. They had like a white rose in like their suits and whatever. And that was a huge thing. And everybody reported on it and how crazy it was that like a normal, just populist party was going to the streets with these kind of people. And that kind of started a whole debate about how right-wing extremists they are. Nowadays, they call for demonstrations themselves and neo-Nazis come and like bring their flags and everything. And it's just a thing that happened, it happens like every other week, basically. And it's not like that's like normal now, but it doesn't like there's not a story on every page again, of course, because it happens so regularly that it kind of has been normalized that people like Höcke, who you probably know, but he's not like the craziest of all of them or the most right-wing extremist of all of them. There's lots of people who think like him in the party, that people like him would go on the street with Reichsbürgers or neo-Nazis or these kind of people. So we can see a lot of a change in how the party represents itself and also in the subjects. So how they would talk about people with a background of migration or migration history who have come from another country. So they even said something like, we need to get rid of this person because she's, from another country. And this has been repeated and repeated over and over. So 2018, I think it was a big thing. Everybody reported on it. Today, it happens like every day on social media.
To what extent the far-right voters in Germany have their parallel source of news? So basically mainstream media, whether it's public broadcasters or papers or magazines like yours, don't even reach them. They're two parallel realities. I'm just asking, I don't know.
Yeah, yes and no. So I think it's totally true that AfD voters or like fans have their own reality in the sense what they believe in and how they look stuff up on social media. But also, like AfD politicians really want to be in mainstream media. They really try to get interviews. They try to be in big stories. That is why they still talk to us. Basically, we don't do interviews with them. We do stories on them. We don't do proper interviews.
Is this part of the editorial policy not to do interviews with them?
6 years already. We haven't done one. And they really don't like it, but I think we do like print and online, and they would get to authorize it, which is a German thing as well. And they would have like, our questions would have to be longer than their answers because they lie so much. So it doesn't really make sense for us. And overall, I think with the social media, they have like the people that already are sympathizing with them, but with us, they would broaden their reach. So I think it's really important how media react. It's really important on how we report. It's really important that we contextualize. So the first questions you asked, I would say the answer is contextualize.
Does it really make sense to fact check? Does anyone react to facts?
Yes, in the sense that they suddenly then change the story and how they meant stuff. So if it's like proper facts, then it does help. If it's interpretation, it doesn't really matter that much, or they would just counter with no argument, but just with, oh, you're from the lying press, you know. So I would always say it's important to understand why people vote for them and to see what kind
And why
of
did they
issues.
vote for them?
It's not that easy to answer.
Very briefly.
I think it's being afraid that your future might be worse than you want it to be. It's not that you're actually doing bad. So you asked me before, what kind of people vote for them? They're for all kinds of areas of our societies. It's not the poor people. It's not the, you know, it's from everywhere. It's basically mostly the middle class, more men than women, but more women are tending to, you know, going towards the AfD. So I think it's not about, well, am I doing well right now or am I doing bad right now? It's about, do I fear that with all the crisis in the world, with all the globalization, like the bad, you know, things that follow globalization, with the bad stuff from the pandemic, am I afraid that I might do worse? And then I think that turning back time in some way with the AfD would help me.
Thank you very much. In about 3 minutes, I'll open the floor for questions. I would like to go to two topics that are related and that in the past, especially if you were a liberal or the left, you didn't discuss very much, and that is the question of identity. Last year, I had an event in Vienna where one of the speakers was the former Prime Minister of Slovakia, Iveta Radičová, a very liberal woman. And I asked her, this was before the elections in Slovakia when the pro-Russian party won, and I asked her, what did you do wrong, Iveta? You were prime minister, you were minister, what did you do wrong? She's a sociologist herself, and she replied, we did not understand how important is identity and safety for people. We just did not understand that. So right now, how do we interpret this identity? How do you defend Finnish identity, French identity, and when it comes to safety or German, I would also like to ask the question about Russia. You have replied about Finland, because there is a big discussion in Europe about delivering weapons to Ukraine, and there is a war in Ukraine. And I'm just wondering to what extent the far right can or cannot contribute to the splitting, political splitting in Europe regarding the support for Ukraine. So please on identity, and then you, Gilles, on identity, and...
If I may say, this handles both the identity and Russia. I think the anti-Russian sentiment is the sort of glue that actually helps to put all the parties together in Finland. So it's one of the only things that the Finnish parties do agree, and that is of course helpful in a country that has been, you know, under attack in the past. As far as the identity is concerned, I do think, just like a German colleague said, the feeling of being left behind, the vague feeling of not being heard, is really one of the most common themes for the support for populism all around Europe. And I don't know what can be done about it, because to be honest, we do see now that the post-Second World War order is crumbling. And it's not only because of the far-right or populism support, it's also because of the social media digitalization and now the AI. So we do have to sort of renegotiate, perhaps at some point, the rules by the United Nations that were created in 1948, and I wish the European governments and the EU would do it at some point and think how they could be renewed to reflect the new world.
Thank you very much, provided the EU remains united.
Yeah.
Gilles, even French socialists, and I have heard some of the leaders speak how much they love France. I'm not saying that one should not love France, but I don't think it was in public discourse before, especially by the left. Now it is. Could you explain this, this whole concept of French identity that has to be defended? Especially, France has had so many terrorist attacks, so this is also a very important issue. So identity and security, Russia, and I understand that Macron is now pushing for Ukraine issue or war being the main topic for the European elections. I don't know where the far right stands at, or the far left.
Oh. Well, it's no question that we are entering a very dangerous period of time, scary times, and that plays in favor of the far right because they can use politics of emotion in a better way. And it's very difficult to go against emotion with rational arguments. When it comes to Europe, I would say that the far right was wrong at every turn. They were against Europe from the very beginning. They were for a Frexit. They were against the European money. And now they understand that they can maybe destroy Europe from internally if they reach a large number of MPs in the coming election. That said, I would say that in France, the public opinion is still very attached to Europe. So for them, I would say that it's still a bridge too far. And that's why Macron is using this Ukrainian card, because it goes back to what of the meaning of Europe. And if the main goal of Europe is protection, it's difficult to go against Europe.
Thank you very much. Ann-Katrin, could you also, are we in a moment in Germany to discuss Leitkultur? You mean like the leading culture, one thing as part of identity, and the Russian-Ukrainian card? Could you please be rather short, but explain?
I think we have discussed Leitkultur too much, basically. We've done that for the last 10 years because of the conservative thought that if they did that, that would help get the AfD smaller. But that is like the wrong way of doing it, because if you push the kind of subject, then, the original gangsters is still going to be the AfD, right? They push the subject before any other people. So everybody will be like, oh, we'll vote for the original then. And I think concerning Russia, I mean, everything that they're doing is totally playing into the Russian playbook. And there's so many connections and so many people being intertwined with the Kremlin that I think that is a subject that has been mentioned a lot by the media, but I don't think a lot of people that vote for the AfD really know that they would help, Russia when voting for the AfD, but they would.
Thank you so much. I open for questions, but my last question is, so what can the media do? But you will answer it at the end in one. Please go ahead and please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Lukas Hansen from Deutsche Welle. Ann-Katrin, you already mentioned that not reporting on everything the far right is saying is one way of doing it. I'm also thinking of this tiny region of Wallonia in Belgium with the Cordon Sanitaire Médiatique, which is kind of like an agreement between mainstream media to not report on far-right ideas at all. And it's a region where the far-right party doesn't seem to get elected at all. They're at 2%, I think, right now. So my question is, does that really help? Because these ideas are out there mainly on social media. We've already said that far-right parties are really good at using social media. So what should our role be as journalists in covering far-right ideas? Because they are out there. What do we do about it?
Thank you. Who wants to reply?
I would repeat that you go to the roots of the support and explain to people, explain to the larger audience what are the issues that resonate, and you open up the facts. I don't think it's I don't think it's very democratic to think that you just don't report on certain opinions that will get publicity through social media anyway. It's not working, and I would also think it's not right.
Gilles?
Do your damn job. Report. Go to close to the people. Talk with the people and write about it. But we have to assume that we are also facing kind of echo chambers, and there's a lot of people we won't reach because they will never trust us. So we are playing in a gray zone. We are talking to people who are in the middle, who could be convinced if they have the impression that we are doing honest reporting. That's why maybe something like explaining how we did our job, the making of part of the reporting is important and could be more important. We should have that piece of information at the end of an article. It would help us to rebuild this trust in which we can gain some ground in this gray zone.
Yeah, if I may add, I believe in too that transparency is sort of the new objectivity. So the mainstream media is very wise in sort of telling and opening up our values and the way we work to the public. But you have to understand that it sort of works to majority of the people, but there will always be some people who never accept any explanation because they are not interested actually in truth. They're interested in power. So it will never work for the whole audience.
Or they're interested in emotions.
That too.
Ann-Katrin, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I'm kind of in between. I think most of that is true. I also would like to add, go back to the basics. So our job is gaining lots of information and then filtering what is really important to our readership or viewership or whatever, and then decide on doing that. It's not, needed that every media does the same story and that we all report on a subject that the AfD has put forward. It's also important that we really do our job well, like Laura said. Don't do everything quickly, just do a few stories very well.
Thank you very much. I saw a question here, please. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Katya Martinova. I'm an exiled Russian journalist based in Germany. And I wanted to ask Katrin and you also here. So again, with the already mentioned tight connections with the far-right parties, with the Russian government, with the financing from the Russian sources, and also the recent case when the AfD members were traveling to Russia to so-called elections to see and I guess to gain some experience how to organize good and fair elections. I wonder, so what do you think, what was the successful strategies to cover this Russian sentiment along far rights in your medias, and how do you think we can collaborate, for instance, with Russian independent medias in uncovering the sentiments? Because I think it's very important, and it's one of the things that still can push people not to vote for the far right when they see...
Thank you. We have 1 minute, so
Yeah.
our speakers have 1 minute. I think I will do only Gilles and Ann-Katrin. Gilles, please.
The facts are already on the table because we can check out the votes of the far-right members of the European Parliament, and they never vote against Russia in the past. Now they're abstained because the elections are closed and they don't want to make waves.
Ann-Katrin?
In Germany, they don't abstain, and they do lots of parliamentary issues that Russia likes or Putin likes. So I think the issue is very clear. I mean, we have I think that's why the AfD is a bit stronger in Eastern German countries than in Western, because of, the history with the Soviet Union. But overall, I think, it's our job just to do the facts, and then politicians, it's not just what can the media do, right? The other politicians, the Democrats, in the sense of every democratic party have to kind of bring that into an emotional, plaidoyer for democracy, and not just have us do the whole job.
Thank you very much. I have 1 minute. If there is a 30-second question, and there will be a 30-second reply. Go ahead, 30 seconds or less.
I'll use the microphone. Just, you've alluded to it, the fact that the
please. Go ahead.
I think that the laziness part is also the product of the very fragile industry and the fact that many newsrooms are depleted. So at the end of the day, they are not doing a good job. 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's,
30 seconds.
yeah. If you only look for clicks, then the fastest way of doing it is repeating something outrageous that somebody says on X. It's very lazy, it's bad journalism, it doesn't open up the background, it doesn't give context. So I would not recommend to do that. That is one of the responsibilities of journalism, to actually add some value to the reporting.
Well, I thank everybody. I think good journalism matters, and I really do hope that we defend good journalism and democracy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.